Welcome to Music Outlook LA, the podcast which highlights the independent artist, whether they are a musician, vocalist, actor, actress, live audio or in-studio engineer, or a videographer, photographer. I'm your host, Will Kimsey. Each episode, we'll look at the gigs of the independent artists, from the venues we play to how we set up and break down, the gear we use and why we use it, and the info we hope you'll find useful as we all make our way in the entertainment industry. Music Outlook LA is brought to you by Kim Z Entertainment LLC. Go to kim-zentertainment.com to find out what they're doing for the independent artist. Kim Z Entertainment LLC. Independent entertainment done independently. My guest today is the legendary journalist, producer, and author, Laurie Kaye. Laurie didn't just report on rock history, she was a part of it. Her career at the RKO Radio Network saw her sit across from some of the titans of music. She famously conducted the final interview with John Lennon on December 8, 1980, and her memoir, Confessions of a Rock and Roll Name Dropper, pulls back the curtain on decades of high-stakes storytelling. So we're going to talk about those legendary gigs with people like Dick Clark, the gear that she used to capture those gigs, and any information she's gathered from a lifetime of being literally on the front lines of rock. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, this is Laurie Kaye. Laurie, how are you this morning?
Thank you. I'm good, and good to meet you all. But I want to let you know that the title of my book is actually Confessions of a Rock and Roll Name Dropper, My Life Leading Up to John Lennon's Last Interview. And it's the story of my rock radio related life and career wrapped around December 8th, 1980, which is John Lennon's last day on the planet, which I spent with him and Yoko at the Dakota, the bulk of the day. And I actually felt like I'd made lifetime friends while I was there. But of course, that never could happen because John was shot and killed mere hours after the interview ended, which has just made me sad ever since.
Yeah, it was just... At the time, I was 14, and I was in junior high, about to go into high school, and I was starting to get into music. I'm a keyboard player, piano player, clarinet, and a couple other woodwinds, and some other things, and so I was learning music and learning about the Beatles and everything else. It was just starting for me. But I was like, that's a big deal. Who would? And it was just a tragic day. It just affected me even though I was just a teenager. So thank you for adding the subtitle to the book that I mentioned. And I'm so far halfway through it, and it is a very interesting read. Ladies and gentlemen, get it, Kindle, buy it hardback, paper, whatever it is.
Here's the book. Here's the paperback version.
Right. I will put all of that in the show notes with the links and everything where to get it. It is a very good, interesting read. But you started your career as an intern at KFRC AM radio. That was in the Bay Area, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you worked your way up to an on-air reporter and an anchor. So what was the business mindset that was needed to make that climb up during that competitive era of radio?
Well, I believed that since my writing and production talent had been super appreciated by everyone I worked for and with there, from the moment I started creating news stories and radio shows during my internship, that I would no doubt be offered a full time KFRC radio job as soon as possible after the internship ended. And that's exactly what happened. I started working there as the news editor. And I loved working at San Francisco's top radio station, which at the time was also the biggest station in the country, too, back then. And after I worked there for quite a while, doing incredible things like the longest Beatles special ever created in the United States, which was RKO Presents the Beatles. And it started out at 14 hours. I wrote and co-produced it. And then we expanded it to 17 hours. And it got syndicated to play all over the world, not just in the country. And we got to change the name to the original one I'd come up with, The Beatles from Liverpool to Legend. And so after that happened, I was encouraged to start an on-air radio career, but at other big radio stations in the country. And so I did. I went to WOW in Omaha and King in Seattle, which I absolutely loved. And then I came back to go on the air at KFRC, and it was great.
All right. See, we're a bunch of music geeks here. We like gear. Our eyes light up like Christmas trees when we go into Guitar Center. It's like, ooh. And so we get technical. So what you've just described, I know my friends are geeking out right now because we have to produce music, shows, and the like. Which leads me up to the next one. You spent years writing for Dick Clark's weekly radio countdown show and his syndicated newspaper column. So what was it like working with the mogul himself, and what did he teach you about professional structure in the industry?
Wow. Well, working for and becoming friends with Dick Clark in the early 1980s was absolutely awesome, since he not only remembered choosing me as the dance contest winner, which he did, to be featured in the promo for his rock music TV special series, which was the Rock and Roll Years on ABC, nearly 10 years before I started working for him. And he also loved hearing me talk all about conducting John Lennon's last interview. And because he'd been such a huge fan of my radio show writing, he begged me to also be the ghostwriter of his weekly nationally syndicated newspaper column, which I, of course, said, yes, Dick, I'd love to do that. So I got to pretend to be him, go to concerts, do interviews, and write as though I were him. And then he was so excited, he wanted me to also ghostwrite his official book memoir. But sad to say, I couldn't, since I was ready to leave to move to New York for a rock and roll TV show production gig that I knew I was about to be offered. So then when I came back to California a couple years later, I wanted to go and work for him again, but instead I went to work for a while for Casey Kasem, who's another important host famous for his radio countdown show, American Top 40.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And just as a side note and a point of interest for us music geeks, all of this was before American Bandstand, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you guys, I know you remember that TV show. We had the lineup in LA of where it went from Bandstand and then Soul Train. And you had to watch both of them.
I should say that Bandstand was being made while I worked for Dick, because I went to a lot of the filmings of it and saw some great groups and everything, and it was fun. But I didn't work with him on that because he already had a full group of people. So that's one of the reasons I went to New York to do rock radio TV shows there.
I'm impressed. I am very impressed. I love it. I love it. And there's also going on a legendary story if you will, about you putting Mick Jagger on hold so he could listen to your newscast. So if that's the case, how do you approach the business of handling such high-profile personalities? Because we musicians have to do that when we go to venues and stuff, and maintain your professional authority, if you will.
Well, it was really cool. And when I had Mick Jagger on the phone, the first thing I did was ask him if he wanted me to call him back or if he wanted to call me back after my newscast, which was about to come up in a few minutes. And instead, he begged me to let him stay on the phone instead and listen to it. And then after it was over, he complimented me incredibly afterwards, like crazy, saying I had an amazing voice and wrote my news stories terrifically. He made me feel super talented. It was incredible and so appreciative of being able to talk with him about his amazing band and their music. So it all kind of paid off. We complimented each other a lot. And it was great to talk to him and tell him about the first time I saw him with the Rolling Stones and how I got to win tickets to that show, which was their Nicaragua benefit at the Forum in LA when I was in high school. And he was just thrilled to hear about that. So we really pleased each other on the phone. It was wonderful. And I've seen the Rolling Stones so many times since. It's been great too.
Yeah, I only saw them once at the Forum, and that was for the Voodoo Lounge tour. So that was later on in the Stones' career. You successfully transitioned from radio into the TV and film production and in casting. So how did your experience as a rock journalist prepare you for the business side of TV production?
Well, my rock and news radio journalism experience definitely prepped me for my eventual TV and video work, since it all involved skilled writing ability and recognition of everyone from fascinating rock stars to actors and guests. And happy to say that my early front page college newspaper writing is what led to my radio newscaster career and eventually my creative producer, casting director, and location manager professions as well.
All right. If any of you Gen X and baby boomers remember RAM radio station call letters, you might remember hearing at the end of one of them an RKO radio production. That was for KHJ. And we had KHJ before it became KCAL TV. They were on Channel 9. So those of you who are just like, okay, why does that sound familiar? There's your connection. So moving on to the gear part of the show with Music Outlook LA, gigs, gear, and info. So during your time with writing and co-producing your rock specials for RKO, like your Beatles from Liverpool to Legend, what was your preferred field recording setup? You got a favorite mic? What is it that you might use? You know, because nowadays the wind blows and now they have the new tech out, so they have better wind screens and that kind of thing. But I'm going to leave that one to you to explain what you did.
Well, I loved and mainly conducted my in-person rock star interviews in both KFRC's DJ studios and my private newsroom studios, which were great sounding, comfortable, private setups. And if instead my interviews needed to take place elsewhere, like outside or in offices, hotels, etc., well, I'd have my engineer bring great portable microphones and set us up with them himself. And it also always worked out really well wherever we were. They all still sound great when I listen back to them.
I would love to be able to see what some of that gear looked like, because one of the things that I'm glad of with the technology that we have nowadays is that it went from being large pieces of equipment to now small, compact things. And, in the recording studio, you have like huge tape reel-to-reel recording machines, 24 track and that kind of thing. And now you can put it all in a computer, have it all on a desktop. But a lot of that vintage gear, I learned on some of that how to do a lot of what I'm doing, and there's still nothing like the old school, nothing like it. So let's get right into your memoir, The Confessions of the Rock and Roll Name Dropper. I know I didn't finish the rest, but it was released as an audiobook in 2024. So what was the recording process like for you doing that audiobook? And would you happen to know what the software or the hardware was that you like using for your audio work nowadays?
Well, so many authors who do their own audiobooks don't actually self-record like I did. I wanted to voice my own because I like my voice, and that's been my career history. But a lot of authors I know have to hire people to do it, which of course I never ever would. And plus, I've had a popular recording studio outside my home here in Los Angeles for a number of years, and the music producer who was renting it back when I wanted to do the audiobook, recorded it for me using actually all of his own microphone products, which turned out great. And everyone who listened to my audiobook loves hearing me, my voice, and the bunch of original rock star interview quotes that I was able to include. So it's worked out really well.
All right. I was going to follow up with something, but it slipped my mind. I mean, I'm just so impressed. Oh, you do have the radio voice. That was it. You have the radio voice. I love hearing it myself. It sounds like radio. You really do. You sound like you belong on the radio.
Did you read in my book how that was recognized in the first place? When I'll tell you again, when I won the tickets to the Rolling Stones to see them at the Nicaragua benefit concert at the Forum while I was in high school, I went to the radio station that I won them from, KMET FM, which was my favorite FM station.
Good old KMET.
To pick up the tickets. And as I went into the office, figuring they would just handed it to me, they said, no, the disc jockey wants to put you on the air and talk to you. And it was B. Mitchell Reed, my favorite disc jockey at the time, otherwise known as the Beamer. And when I went in, he asked me my name, my age, where I went to school, if I was excited about winning the tickets. And I said, yes. And I answered him. And then when it was over, he said, Laurie, with your voice and your method of answering all my questions, you need an on-air radio career. And I said, what? And he said, yes, really, that's something you've got to set up for and think about doing, when you get out of school. And I was so excited. I immediately thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an on-air radio person. And he made it happen for me in a way.
All right. I remember KMET. They had the logo is what I really remember. It was rainbow-like on a black backdrop. I remember KMET days. So as I was saying before, I do IT work on the side. I used to design web pages from scratch before Wix came along, and I had to put in the code and everything else. But it gets into my next question. Because of my IT work, I noticed your site was made on Wix. And so how do you find the experience of managing your own digital gear and your online presence as an author today?
Well, I'm very impressed by what you said you've done before Wix, but I'm happy to say that I have a husband who is my Wix website expert. So it's definitely not at all up to me to build my site on a daily basis. He's super talented and helpful, and he makes that part of my self-book promotion much easier and better. Thank you, Kurt. That's my husband. The thing is, although I tell him what I need to put on and what I want to use, and I kind of come up with the visuals, the photos, that sort of thing, he's the one who does it technically, puts it all in for me.
All right. Thank you, Kurt, as well. I took a look at it, and I like it too. I'm a Wix user. As soon as the site showed up, I was very happy. I was like, oh, thank God I don't have to go in there and write the source code anymore. Because I'll tell you, as I'm not that great with code, but as far as it goes, say, for example, you have a picture, like take the picture behind you of you with Mick and, why did I say Mick? I've got the Stones on my head. With you and John and Yoko. And say, for example, the picture was to go straight across and then, do something simple and go away. Well, you have to type the instructions in to be able to do that, right? If you are one character off, say, for example, you have to put in, and there's a certain instruction, and after you put the instruction in, you follow it with a colon. If you hit a semicolon, your picture's going to do something funky. That's all I'm saying. And you've got to go through lines and lines of code to find out, my picture's just supposed to do this. Why is it doing all of this? And I was happy that Wix came along because I design our web pages for Kimsey Entertainment myself. And like your husband takes direction from you, I take cues from my wife, who looks at afterwards and said, no, I don't like this. Do this instead. Yes, dear. So I agree. But you wives make our lives better. So thank you for putting up with us, I'll just say. So you did do John Lennon's final interview on December 8th. And the context of that authenticity. What was the one thing about that talk that made you really feel you got to the real John Lennon?
Well, he was just so incredibly complimentary and validating, and it was just incredible. He was super honest and friendly and completely validating. Every time he heard any of my questions and comments, he responded by saying things like, yes, love, exactly, Laurie. And that just made me feel so incredible because he'd always been my idol. And now to be sitting right next to him on the love seat for so many hours and having him pull down his glasses every time I would say something and stare at me and smile, it just made me feel great. And I can't help but think after all these years, he was without a doubt the most supportive interviewee I've ever spent so many hours talking with. And it was all the time that I spent with him and Yoko at the Dakota was incredibly flattering and just one of the best days of my entire life. But I still look at it as one of the best and worst day, in fact, not just one of, but the best and worst day of my entire life.
Wow, I'm just glad you were able to get that interview done. I'm just speechless. I can't follow that one up, but I'm so glad you were able to capture that. Let's move on to more about the book, the tech part of it, the cover specifically. As you can see, the cover is over Laurie's right shoulder. And it was created by a Grammy-winning designer by the name of Mick Haggerty, ladies and gentlemen. And that photo is from the final interview. And why was it important for you to use that specific piece for the memoir?
Well, my picture with John Lennon and Yoko Ono, it was taken at the tail end of our interview at the Dakota on December 8th, 1980. And it has no doubt been my absolutely favorite photo for years. And here is the original color photo. This is the one that was taken. And my friend and book cover designer, Mick Haggerty, totally dug this photo too.
Mm-hmm.
And he went, wow, that's great. And he turned this original version into the black and white book cover, which looks totally great on my book and became super popular right away, as I've showed you before.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The cover. And it's just been something that people look at and say, wow, what an amazing book cover. That's one of my favorites, which makes me feel great. And I have to admit that actually the photo I took with Paul and Linda McCartney, too, in London during our June 1979 interview was super cool and loving, too. And it was also a totally awesome, lengthy interview. And here's that loving photo. You can tell that we really cared about each other. And this is actually right after they both hugged me and Paul McCartney kissed me, which just made me feel so excited because I'd been hoping that would happen since I was, 6 years old. It was great.
Oh, wow. That had to have been fun. I mean, Laurie, you got to hang out with legends.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no better high. I mean, me as a musician, being able to meet some of the legends is just amazing. Every year I try to get to NAMM, National Association of Merchant Musicians. And in doing that, you end up meeting a lot of people, not just other musicians and retailers and such, but on occasion you just might be able to run into somebody you admire as a musician. Well, I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston, so I got to hang out with the kids of some of the greats. And going to NAMM, one of the highlights of that was there was a Prince. One of his bands back in the 80s was a group called The Time. And there were two people who were instrumental in their sound. When they went on to produce a number of artists, they produced Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation, and they did some work with the Human League, I'm Only Human, and the other songs on that album, I'm drawing a blank on when that album was. But I got to meet Terry Lewis at NAMM, and it took me, and I got a picture of it, it took a lot out of me to not just geek out and, oh, Terry Lewis, ah! But you got to hang out with some of the greats, and I just wish I was a fly on the wall to be able to see your reaction. I mean, you described how he kissed you, how Paul McCartney kissed you, and you wanted that to happen. I would have loved to have seen your expression on your face when that happened. That would have been great. That would have been great.
And so many other incredible rock musicians that I've both interviewed or met up with, at their performances. Like one of the greatest interviews I've ever done was with Little Richard Penniman, that was hours long, spending so much time with him. And that was for Rock Magazine. That was actually a print interview. That was incredible. He was so wonderful. And he's just somebody that everybody's a fan of. That was really cool. And then others that I interviewed for radio that I loved were the Ramones, my favorite punk rock band.
Mm-hmm.
They were incredible. And Talking Heads, great, also. And just so many other musicians that I've met, even though if I haven't technically interviewed them, were like Lenny Kaye from Patti Smith,
mm-hmm.
was one of my favorite. And we met, as I say in my book, because when I moved to New York, we were neighbors. He lived a block up from CBGB, the punk venue, and I lived a block down. So because we have such similar names, he's Lenny Kaye, I'm Laurie Kaye, we got each other's mail, we got each other's phone calls.
Oh my
So we had
gosh.
to get to know each other and become friends so we could
Right.
give each other our stuff back. And so I saw him when he came to LA and did his own book launch signing here at Book Soup, and so many other great musicians that I've gotten to connect with. It's been wonderful.
That's great. Like I said, and you've asked me before, I've gotten halfway through your book, and I'm not trying to give anything away, so go get the book. But you talk about the Grateful Dead, and I know I didn't give you this question, but I just wanted to throw this out there. I played in a band. I play for churches and all that. But because I have a new IT client, I had to let the band go. But we were a cover band here in LA, Orange County area. And I just mentioned it because you were discussing the Grateful Dead in your book. And I hadn't listened to much Dead either, but I just wanted to throw out there the band covered Franklin's Tower. That's all.
Well, I have to admit, I was never a Grateful Dead fan, and I talk about that in my book, and a kind of a contact that I had at one point that I don't want to tell the story. I'll let people read it.
Yes, exactly.
It's a bit embarrassing.
Well, I'm not giving it away. I just wanted to throw out there. We covered Franklin's Tower. 3 chords, I think. That was it. And I was able to take an organ solo. It was great. But getting back to the book and the legendary John Lennon, thinking back on that anniversary and the time that you spent at the Dakota apartment building, how has that experience shaped your personal philosophy on music and journalism?
Well, it's just been a horrible way to finish up everything, because as I walked out of the Dakota, I was just bothered and accosted and bugged and followed by a creepy guy who turned out to be John Lennon's assassin. And I've just felt guilty ever since for not reporting him to the security team at the Dakota, because they probably would have looked at him and realized that he had a gun in the pocket of the coat he was wearing, which I didn't. And he kept following me and saying over and over again, "Did you talk to him? Did you get his autograph? What'd he say? What'd he say? What'd he say?" And he did that over and over for blocks as I walked away from the Dakota to my friend's office. And I still feel so horrible and guilty about that. There's nothing I can do about it.
Well, you dust yourself off, you pick yourself up by the bootstraps, and you keep on going. John was an incredible talent.
Absolutely. And Double Fantasy, the album that had been released right before, and the reason we were doing the interview with Yoko Ono, was just super cool and loving, and was basically recorded to encourage everybody listening to it, all the couples, to really have more discussions between themselves, like he and Yoko did with the songs that they'd written for each other. And so I was a huge fan. I still am.
Yeah, we even covered what was that Beatles song that we did? I've got to go look it up. We covered a number of songs from funk and rock. We did Flamethrower for Jay Giles. We even covered The Clash, Romantics, and I can't even think of the other songs that we did. But we did a number of... when I get the Beatles song, I will definitely mention it to you. But we did cover a couple of Beatles ones. Oh, Money, That's What I Want. That was the song that we covered. We covered Money. That was... I got a little story behind that. I mean, the piano in the beginning. Da, 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 da. As a musician, I have to listen to stuff and not have a lead sheet, not have the music there for, to play it. And I have to pick up a lot of stuff by ear. You do that in the church and all over. So, and I just could not hear the interval to nail that part. And it's only it happens 3 times in the song, and I heard one of the notes and I'm just struggling. I'm like, okay, where is that second note? But when I finally had it, the people in the band were looking at me in the rehearsals like, have you figured it out yet? Wow. I'll have it by the gig. And once I had it, literally the night before a gig, and we did the song, and it just turned out great. They tried to hide their surprise. We didn't think you'd ever figure that part out. It's like, I had it. I just couldn't hear the interval between the 2 notes. But John was an incredible talent. Paul, I like the work he did with Wings as well. And all of them were just incredible musicians. Incredible.
Absolutely. And I loved interviewing George too, Harrison, who I did for the show I was writing, the top 100 of the 70s, because of course he had a song that was going to be on that, and he was wonderful to talk to too. So sad to say, the only former Fab Four member that I never got to interview was Ringo Starr, which is heartbreaking in a way that just never happened for any reason.
Yeah, life does crazy things like that. You would have had the complete set if you had managed to get that interview. So I always ask this of my guests as the very last question as we close out Music Outlook LA gigs, gear, and info. I ask them, what's in your car? In other words, what do you listen to when you're out and about, or some of your favorite go-to songs? I mean, I had a guy who before his gigs, his famous jazz bassist, he doesn't listen to music. He listened to the news before his shows. Wow. I thought that was, I get it though. You don't want to have your head clouded with a bunch of notes. But what's your stuff in the car? I mean, you've got to have, your CD player and satellite and cassettes, and you probably have a collection that rivals anybody.
Well, FM rock radio stations based in LA that play plenty of incredibly classic hit songs from the past decades are what I have loaded in my car. And I'm ready to play them. Everything from KLOS 95.5 to KROQ 106.7 to Jack FM 93.1. And I listen to them all and I sing along with all of them, no matter where or when I'm driving, or even if I'm a passenger instead. And the funny thing is, just the other day, my husband and I were coming back from our place in Joshua Tree. And so for about 2.5 hours, we were listening to radio stations, and I sang along the whole time. And it just made me wish so much that I was a musician, or, somebody who was able to sing for people. But I'm probably not good enough doing that, to be honest. But I love singing in a car.
I do too. I end up not just singing because I'm jazz, R&B. I learned classically. I do rock. I play whatever's in front of my face, But for the most part, I'm an R&B head, and I mention all of that because I do like to listen, and in listening to R&B, I'll sing along. But one of the things I do, and a lot of other musicians do, especially jazzers, is when we're listening to, say, somebody like Branford Marsalis or any horn player or whatever, and they take their solo, we end up singing the solo. And I had my wife looked at me and she's like, "You're singing the solo." I was like, "Am I?" And you're hitting the notes. Okay. It was fun, though. It was really fun. I saw your Bowie back there, your Bowie book, and I'm working on a solo set of covers where I'm going to just be doing everything on keyboard. And there's 2 songs. One that I did with the previous band. We covered Suffragette City. What was that? The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust album, I think.
Oh,
And
see, David Bowie was one of my favorite interviews too, and one of my all-time favorite concerts in the entire world in my entire life, and I've been to thousands of concerts, was the very first David Bowie concert I went to, which was the Ziggy Stardust tour way back, in the early 70s. So I've always loved David Bowie, and it makes me really sad to know that, he passed away. It's the anniversary of his death tomorrow.
yeah, it is. It is. And the other song, and the song I'm working on the solo set, is the R&B style Let's Dance. When I first heard that, I was like, oh, this is funky. I can get with this. Because I've always known David to be a rocker. And when that song came out, the chords are very simple, it's like, because most funk is just a handful of chords. A lot of it is, not most, a lot of it is. And I sat down at the keyboard and I played out some of the chords. I'm like, wow, he did all that off of these few chords. I was just definitely impressed. I was impressed. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Laurie Kaye. And Laurie, before we go, I want to not only thank you profusely for granting us the opportunity here, Music Outlook LA, to speak with you and just get a snippet of your illustrious rock career. But I wanted to give a special nod to a little piece of broadcasting history that you built. So long before we had the podcasts and streaming documentaries, you wrote and co-produced a 17-hour radio special, which you were able to rename The Beatles from Liverpool to Legend. And I just wanted to give a shout out for that because, folks, if you want to hear what appointment radio used to sound like, and you want to get a hint at that vintage and how we used to do it, similar to musicians where you had the band in the studio, where you had to schedule your day around a particular broadcast, appointment radio, and because if you didn't do it that way, you were going to miss it. It was gone. You can still find some of these archive clips on YouTube. So go to YouTube, look up The Beatles from Liverpool to Legend, and you'll be able to get an idea of what it was like back in the day, what showed true professionalism, in my opinion, to get the job done. Like
and it's got lots of...
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's got lots of older quotes, too, of the Beatles from the 60s that I got from the original RKO stations who interviewed them on the air there back when I was in elementary school. And so I got to put those in the special too. But thank you. Yeah, I hope people listen to the pieces of it that are on YouTube, even though it's illegally on YouTube still. I hope they listen to it.
Yeah, go find yourself the legal copies. But yeah, it will give you an idea of the professionalism required. Like I said, if you were the host, you got to schedule yourself around the guest. And if you weren't available, you missed an opportunity. So Laurie, again, thank you so much for being on the show. I do appreciate it. And again, that's going to be it for the Music Outlook LA gigs, gear, and info. So be sure to check out the show notes for Laurie's website and contact information. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the show at both Spreaker.com, Spreaker, and on YouTube. Music Outlook LA is also available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Amazon Music, SoundCloud, Spotify, CastBox, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and the podcast search engine known as Listen Notes. So wherever you get your podcasts, I just rattled off about 9 or 10 of them. And if you folks would do me a favor, go to podchaser.com and give us a rating. Appreciate it. I'm Will Kimsey, a.k.a. WK Music. That's Laurie Kaye. Peace.
Bye. Thank you.
This podcast is both brought to you and produced by Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. Music Outlook LA is a copyrighted broadcast of Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. The views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Will Kimsey or Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or any other use of this product without the express written consent of Kimsey Entertainment, LLC is strictly prohibited.